Bungee jump. My summer job ruined my life, all because of one slip-up with just one person. I'll never be able to sleep at night. 3 months ago, I signed up to be an instructor for a bungee jump-off at an abandoned railway viaduct called Skeleton Bridge. It's a tourist trap for sure, but more of a spot for locals, if that makes any sense. There were 6 instructors, including me, split into a morning and afternoon shift. I worked afternoons with a slower, older gentleman along with another guy about my age named Ray. Ray was an annoying creep from the very start, always flirting with the female jumpers, taking advantage of their trust in us and their nerves about the jump. Honestly, I swear the only reason we didn't get shut down for harassment after the first week was because I made sure to be in charge of attaching the harness. It's the most complicated part of the job, making sure everything is tight and secure for each person's body. But it's also when the jumpers are at their most vulnerable, as we come into close physical contact while they stand with their arms and legs apart. I never wanted to let Ray get the chance to cop a feel on some unsuspecting woman and claim it was part of the process. As for the other 2 guys, they didn't have to do much. The older gentleman spouted off safety instructions and had people sign the necessary waivers. Then all Ray had to do was clip the rope onto the harness and coax the more timid jumpers over the edge. It was a safe but efficient assembly line that kept the line short, but it was prone to breaking down. For instance, when the most attractive woman any of us had ever seen on the bridge came to jump, her name was Maria. We don't usually get onto a first-name basis with every jumper, but how could anybody blame us for wanting to be friendly with her? Unfortunately, it led to some, shall I say, crowding. As I was attaching her harness, Ray came over from the edge and brought it in, quickly embarrassing himself. Ray said, "You're doing it wrong." I said, "What? Don't listen to him. I've done this 1,000 times. Trust me, you want me to do it." Ray replied, "He doesn't know how to handle a woman with curves like you." I said, "Dude, come on." Maria interrupted and said, "Oh, he's not going to handle any part of me. He's going to do his job, then you're going to do your job." "Got that, bungee boy?" Ray muttered. "Yeah, whatever, dumbass." I told him, "Stay focused." Okay, well, maybe we both embarrassed ourselves a bit, but despite the distraction, I made sure her harness was properly attached and ready to go. I'm positive. Once I double-checked everything, I sent her back over to Ray for the jump. A few seconds later, as I was still trying to eavesdrop on their conversation, the next jumper came up. So I had to begin telling them about how it was going to fit on them. The plan was to have them be almost ready to go by the time that girl Maria was done with her jump. Depending on how long she took to go through with it over my shoulder, I could hear her hesitation. Pretty soon, Ray offered a solution. He could give her a little push. Technically, we weren't allowed to do that. The law said that we had to let them go on their own accord, but realistically, some people need the help. However, I wasn't thinking about the legality of the whole thing. I rolled my eyes, thinking this was typical of Ray rushing and pressuring jumpers to go before they were ready, convincing them to ask for that push. Anything for an excuse to put his hands on a woman. To my surprise, she agreed. I wanted to go over there and make sure everybody present was thinking clearly, but I thought better of it. That seemed excessive and I had something else to focus on, so I let it go. If only I had looked over my shoulder just a few seconds earlier. I asked Maria, "Ready?" she said. "Yeah," I asked. "Are you sure?" she replied. "Yes, I'm ready." I said, "All right, 3, 2, 1. Then someone from the crowd suddenly screamed, "No, the rope!" I shouted. "Huh, Ray, you idiot, how could you forget the rope?" Ray yelled back. "What are you talking about?" I screamed. "This was your one job, don't pin this on me." Ray shouted, "This is your fault, liar, murderer, you should go down there with her." I heard him scream, "You bastard, I'll kill you." Then I heard someone cry out, "Somebody help, get this guy off me, he's crazy." Ray kept shouting, "You'll pay for this, you'll pay, you did it on purpose, didn't you? It should have been you at the bottom of the valley, not her." Since that day, I've not seen the sun. I've spent every hour behind bars, desperately trying to prove my innocence. It was Ray's responsibility to ensure the cord was attached to the jumpers. It was his only responsibility, But he continues to lie to distort the truth and gaslight everyone involved. He claims I was supposed to attach the cord when it was up to him every single time. Ray is just that type of person, a slimy, spineless wreck. He will never admit the truth. But one way or another, he'll make sure he faces justice. On June 13th, Maria Eduardo Rodriguez de Freitas, 21, died after falling about 131 ft from a bridge in Brazil. Police said Rodriguez de Freitas was launched from the bridge without being connected to the equipment meant to stop her fall. Investigators say the rope jump instructors charged in the case do not remember who was supposed to attach or check the safety ropes. Video of the incident shared online appeared to show the two men lifting Rodriguez de Freitas and tossing her from the bridge as onlookers realized she was not attached to a safety rope and shouted, "Guys, the rope." She was launched airplane style with instructors lifting her above their shoulders as they spread her arms. 6 people were questioned in connection with the incident, though only 3 of the instructors remained in custody. The Reddit stranger. I still remember scrolling through that subreddit one rainy afternoon in Portland. The kind of gray day that makes you crave connection like a shot of espresso. It was nothing too serious, just a place to vent about life and swap stories with strangers. That's where I found George's post. 26 male in LA, looking for someone to trade playlists and existential dread with. Bonus if you like indie folk and bad decisions. His words hooked me right away. I was 24, freshly out of a soul-sucking office job, crashing at my sister's place while I figured out my next move. I replied with a link to my favorite Sufjan Stevens track and a quip about how my dread came with a side of overpriced oat milk lattes. We messaged back and forth for hours that first day. He was funny in that self-deprecating way, talking about his gig as a barista in Silver Lake, how he dropped out of film school because the professors were too busy stroking their own egos to notice mine was deflated. I told him about my love for hiking the Columbia Gorge trails, how I'd once gotten lost for 3 hours chasing a waterfall that turned out to be a mirage. By the end of the week, we were texting every damn day. Good morning memes, late-night rants about exes who ghosted harder than Casper. He sent voice notes of him humming along to Bon Iver, his voice all gravelly and warm, like he'd just woken up from a nap in the sun. I started looking forward to those pings more than my morning coffee. After a month, the texts turned flirty. He wrote, "You ever think about ditching the rain for some California chaos?" Followed by a photo of him. God, he looked good. I laughed it off at first, but the idea burrowed in. Why not? Portland was starting to feel like a soggy trap. "Chaos sounds perfect," I texted back, "but only if you promise not to make me regret the train ride." He replied instantly, "Deal, I'll show you the real LA, the kind that doesn't end up on postcards." So I booked the ticket. Amtrak from Portland to LA. 30 hours of staring out at blurring landscapes. My stomach a knot of excitement and nerves. I packed light. Jeans, a couple of band tees, that black dress I had bought on impulse from Urban Outfitters. Told my sister I was meeting a friend. Downplayed it when she raised her eyebrows. "It's just an adventure," I'd said. She hugged me tight anyway, slipping a 20 into my pocket like I was still her kid sister heading to prom. The train pulled into Union Station at dusk. George was there, leaning against a pillar in faded Levi's and a threadbare Radiohead tee, scrolling his phone. He looked even better in person, taller than I'd imagined, with those green eyes that crinkled when he spotted me. "Holy shit, you made it," he said, pulling me into a hug. His arms were strong around me, and for a second I melted into it, the exhaustion from the ride vanishing. But then he pulled back, rubbing his eyes like he was hungover from hell. "Sorry, I'm a mess. Partied too hard last night. Didn't crash till 5:00 a.m. These industry people kept buying shots." He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. I brushed it off, blaming the travel fog. "No worries. Lead the way, tour guide." We walked a few blocks to his place in Echo Park, the streets buzzing with evening traffic and distant bass from someone's car stereo. He rambled about the neighborhood, the taco trucks, the murals that screamed gentrification, but there was an edge to him, like he was forcing the charm. When we got to his house, a sagging craftsman divided into too many units. He unlocked the gate with a key under a fake rock. "Home sweet home," he muttered. His room was 8 by 6, 2 feet tops, barely enough space for the thin mat on the scuffed hardwood floor. His duffel of clothes shoved in the corner like an afterthought. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling. On the suitcase serving as a nightstand sat a tiny wooden box crammed with faded ticket stubs and Polaroids. Mementos from a life that felt worlds away from this. "It's cozy," I said, forcing a smile as I dropped my bag. He shrugged. "Well, rent and film dreams don't pay the bills." We collapsed onto the mat, his arm draping over me like it belonged there. The nap hit fast, his breathing steady against my neck, the distant hum of the city lulling me under. I woke to him stirring. "Hungry?" he asked. We grabbed ramen at a hole in the wall spot down the block, steam rising from plastic bowls. It was good, spicy miso with extra pork belly. But when the bill came, he fished in his pockets and came up empty. "I left my wallet at home. You mind spotting me?" "I'll Venmo you later." I waved it off, sliding my card over. "It's cool, consider it my LA tax." He grinned all teeth. "You're a saint, most girls would have bylaid." Back at his place, we sprawled on the mat again, his ancient Bluetooth speaker crooning Fleet Foxes while we waited for the party invite to solidify. "It's going to be epic," he promised, passing me a warm beer from a mini fridge that hummed like a dying bee. "My buddy's throwing it at his spot in the hills. You'll love the crowd. Musicians, artists, the works." I nodded, sipping slow, my jet lag catching up. His hand found mine, thumb stroking my knuckles. It felt nice, almost normal. By 10, we piled into an Uber with 2 of his friends, Jake and Mia. The ride up into the Hollywood Hills was a blur of laughter and inside jokes I didn't get. George's energy shifted the second we arrived at the sprawling mid-century house. Lights pulsing through floor-to-ceiling windows, bass thumping like a heartbeat. People spilled out onto the lawn, red Solo cups in hand. Inside it was crazy. Bodies moving to some remix of Tame Impala. Fairy lights strung like drunken stars. George's friends ditched us immediately, but not before Jake clapped him on the back too hard. "You still crashing on that air mattress? When are you going to level up, man?" Mia snorted, tossing her hair. "Yeah, or at least get a real bed. Can't be humping the floor forever." George's jaw tightened, his laugh forced. "Fuck off, you too. Not all of us sold out for Daddy's trust fund." They kept at it as we wove through the crowd. Roasts about his starving artist vibe, his string of failed auditions. By the patio doors, he was red-faced, fists clenched. I tugged his sleeve, pulling him aside into a quieter corner. "Hey," I said softly, cupping his cheek. "They're your friends, but they're dicks. Don't let it get to you." He leaned into my touch, eyes glassy. "Yeah, I know. It's just tonight's supposed to be good, you know, with you here. Thanks for coming all this way. Means something." "Anytime," I murmured, heart swelling a little. We slipped back in, but he got swept up immediately. Hugs from old acquaintances, back slaps from guys with ironic mustaches. "Gotta say hi to few people," he said over his shoulder. "Grab a drink. I'll be right back." That right back stretched into 3 hours. I ended up on the patio with a loose circle of strangers. 2 girls from USC studying screenwriting. A guy named Theo who rolled his own cigarettes and talked about Burning Man like it was the second coming. They were cool, trading stories about bad dates and worse tattoos. But I kept glancing inside, scanning for his messy hair. Nothing. The night cooled, goosebumps prickling my arms under my thin sweater. A girl with blue streaked hair sidled up during a lull, offering me a joint. "You okay? You look like you got ditched." I forced a laugh. No, just people watching." But then another guy tall with a man bun leaned in. "Seriously though, you good? Seem kind of lost out here." I shrugged it off, but it stung. Did I look that pathetic? The loner from out of town nursing a warm seltzer while everyone else blurred into the fun. Finally, I pushed back inside, the crowd a sweaty wall. Elbows jabbed my ribs. Laughter drowned out the music. No sign of George. Had he bylaid, forgotten me? I spotted his roommate Alex by the kitchen island pouring shots. "Hey, have you seen George?" I yelled over the din. Alex grimaced, handing me a plastic cup. "Yeah, he's around partying like it's his last night on Earth." He paused. "You need something," I said. "Tell him I'm heading out, going to grab a motel. This isn't my scene." Alex nodded, weaving off. He came back 5 minutes later, face dark. Found him. He's being a total douchebag, said you're overreacting. Let me walk you back to the house. No way you're dropping cash on a room tonight. The trek down the hills felt endless. Alex was quiet at first, then opened up. George is a good dude deep down, but he's too much into stuff binges, chasing tail to feel alive. Probably inside right now, buried in some girl's neck or railing lines off the bathroom sink. Sorry you got caught up in it. I swallowed hard, the cool air biting my cheeks. It's fine. I just thought it was more. Alex squeezed my shoulder. You're better than this circus, trust me. Back at the house, the gate creaked like a bad omen. Thanks for the escort, I said, hugging him quick. Seriously, you're a lifesaver, he said. Anytime, lock the door behind you. He vanished into the night, leaving me alone. I curled up on George's mat. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with party lights and his laugh. Then sometime past 3:00 a.m. the door clicked, footsteps heavy and uneven. The mat dipped. He whispered, "Hey, missed you out there." I stiffened, heart slamming. "George, stop, I don't want this." He froze and then pulled back just enough to loom over me in the dark. "What? Are you serious? You come all the way down here, crash in my bed, and now you're playing none. What was the point of any of this? You're such a goddamn waste of time." My chest burned, tears pricking hot. "Get off me," I hissed, shoving him away. He rolled off with a groan, muttering curses into the pillow. I turned my back, body rigid, the hurt festering like a bruise. Morning light filtered through the grimy blinds, turning everything sickly yellow. George snored, oblivious. I grabbed my bag and slipped out. I bought a ticket home with the last of my cash. Portland welcomed me with drizzle. My sister waiting at the platform with takeout and no questions. I crashed for 2 days, binging old rom-coms, letting the ache dull. A month later, his text lit up my phone. He wrote, "Hey, been thinking about you. Rough patch here. Could you spot me $50? Promise I'll pay you back. You are amazing." I stared at it, thumb hovering, then deleted the thread, blocked him clean. The Sims scam. I remember the exact moment I logged into The Sims that summer after college. It was June 2012, and I just graduated with a culinary degree from a state school in Texas. Feeling like the world was this big shiny oyster waiting for me to shuck it. But reality hit quick. Student loans piling up. No job prospects beyond flipping burgers at some chain. So I escaped into the game, building virtual lives that were way better than my own. That's where I met Henry, or at least that's what he called himself online. Henry's avatar was this ripped dude with a mansion, exotic cars, and a pool that could have hosted the Olympics. We started chatting in a custom server, trading tips on how to max out skills and cheat the system. He messaged me one night, "Dude, you got to sell those rare artifacts on the black market forums." I made enough to build my real-life rig, a beast with dual GPUs and water cooling. I was hooked. He sent pics of his setup. This glowing tower that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. Then came the stories. How he turned in-game hustles into real-life cash, enough to fund rock-climbing trips with his girlfriend. He shared photos and holy moly, she was hot. He typed, "She's a badass, and I'm head chef at this upscale spot downtown. You said you're a chef too. We could use a guy like you." I laughed it off at first, but the more we talked, the more I idolized him. He was everything I wasn't. Confident, adventurous, living large. We'd voice chat for hours. Him bragging about whipping up gourmet fusion dishes while I slaved over ramen in my crappy apartment. He said one evening, his voice crackling through my headset, "Man, after you graduate, come up here to Seattle. I can hook you up with a manager gig at my restaurant. Starting pay is solid, like $50K plus tips. Just say the word." Graduation came and went, and I was still jobless, crashing on my buddy's couch. Henry's offer echoed in my head. I asked, "You serious?" He replied, "Dead serious, bro. Pack your shit and drive up. I'll sort out the details." That was it. No resume, no interview, just blind faith in this online bromance. I pawned my old laptop, my TV, even my chef's knives for quick cash. I loaded up my car with what was left. Clothes, a sleeping bag, and dreams of starting fresh. The drive took 7 brutal days, endless highways through deserts and mountains, blasting podcasts to stay awake. I texted Henry updates. Just crossing into Colorado, halfway there. He'd reply with thumbs up emojis and promises of epic nights out. An hour from Seattle, my phone rang. He said, "Hey man, bad news. The manager spot fell through. Owner hired his nephew or some shit. You shouldn't come." My heart dropped. "What? I'm almost there, dude, like literally an hour out." Silence then. He said, "All right, fuck it. Come anyway. Crash with us till you sort something." I pulled up to this rundown complex in a sketchy part of town, peeling paint, trash bags piled by the dumpsters. Section 8 housing, I later learned. Henry greeted me at the door looking nothing like his photos. Skinny, unkempt beard, eyes bloodshot. "Bro, you made it." He pulled me into a bro hug. Inside, a one-bedroom crammed with 4 other people, 2 guys on the couch playing Xbox, a girl in the kitchen doing I can't even describe it here. 3 cats prowled around, shedding fur everywhere. I'm allergic as hell. My eyes started watering immediately. Then Mia emerged from the bedroom, gorgeous. "Hi, I'm Mia. Henry's told me all about you," she said softly, shaking my hand. "We shot the shit that first night, but it turned fast. Pills appeared." Henry asked, "Want in?" Popping a couple. "No, I'm good, man," I muttered, nursing a beer. The party raged till dawn, music blasting, people laughing hysterically at nothing. I crashed on the floor, sneezing from the cats, wondering what the hell I'd done. Day 2, I hit the pavement. "Gotta find work," I told Henry as I headed out. He said, "Good luck, man." I landed a dishwasher gig at a greasy diner. Minimum wage, graveyard shifts. It sucked, but it was survival. Back at the apartment, tension simmered. Henry and Mia argued constantly, voices rising through thin walls. He'd snap, "You're such a bitch," she'd cry. Then they'd make up like nothing happened. By day 3, Henry cornered me in the kitchen. "Hey, we're all moving out soon to a better place. 2 bedrooms, no more crowding. You in?" I asked, skeptical. "Where?" he said. "Subsidized spot downtown. Mia's got connections through her job." Mia worked retail from what I gathered, but I didn't press. We scraped together deposits over the next weeks. Me from my job, them from God knows where. Week 3, we moved into this slightly less shitty apartment. Fresh paint, actual space. First night we celebrated with pizza and beer. Henry toasted, clinking bottles, to new beginnings. But midnight hit and it exploded. I heard shouting from their room. Henry yelled, "You filthy woman," then thuds, fists on flesh. Mia screamed. I burst in. Henry had her pinned, face red, swinging. The cats scattered. I shouted, "Stop! What the hell, man?" He turned wild-eyed. "Mind your business." Mia sobbed, bruises blooming on her arms. She whispered to me, "Please just go." I backed out, heart pounding. That night haunted me, her cries echoing in my dreams. It happened again a week later. Louder, more vicious, glass shattered. He kept screaming, "You're worthless, you're worthless, you're worthless." I told the dispatcher, "Domestic violence in progress, he's beating her bad." Cops arrived quick. 2 officers, badges gleaming. One asked, "What's going on?" Henry and Mia suddenly united. Henry said, "Nothing, officer, just a lover's quarrel." Mia forced a smile. "He's overreacting, our friend here." They pointed at me. "He's the problem causing drama." The cops eyed me suspiciously. "Sir, you need to leave," they said, escorting me out. There I was, 2:00 a.m. on the curb, 1,700 miles from Texas. No keys, no wallet, left inside in the rush, homeless, broke, allergic sneezes racking my body. Rain started. Seattle's infamous drizzle turning to a downpour. I huddled under an awning. Phone died, scrolling contacts, who to call, family. They'd say I told you so. A cab passed. I flagged it with my last 20. I told the driver, "Nearest motel." The driver grunted. "Rough night, huh?" I replied. "You have no idea." Checked into a flea bag place. Stained sheets, roaches skittering. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying it all. How had I been so stupid, chasing some online fantasy, ignoring red flags, but worse was thinking about Mia, trapped with that monster. Should I have fought harder, called social services? Morning came. I pawned my phone for bus fare, hitchhiked south. Took days sleeping in stations, eating vending machine crap. Back in Texas, I crashed with my sister. She asked, hugging me tight, "What happened?" I said, "Long story, but I learned. Never trust pixels over people." Professor Williams. I had a hard time in college. I didn't get any scholarships and I wasn't rich like a lot of my classmates. I had to work 2 jobs in addition to all my classes. Most of my professors were pretty great though. They knew my situation and gave me extensions when I needed them. Plus, they weren't too upset if I dozed off in class after working all night. The only person I had an issue with was my history teacher, Professor Williams. Because it was a small college, there wasn't a lot of teachers to choose from. I had to take 4 of his classes, and each time he treated me like dirt. He graded my papers more harshly than anyone else's. He chose to call on me whenever he knew I didn't know the answer. Instead of calling me by my name, he just called me hillbilly for 4 freaking years. When I confronted him between classes sophomore year, he straight up told me that he was harder on me because he wanted me to excel. He wanted to push me to my limits. I knew that was BS. The real reason was that he was an elitist. He saw me as the poor kid who wasn't supposed to be there, and he wanted to push me until I dropped out. I'd seen him do it to a few other low-income students at the school. There was this one guy in my dorm, Terry something. Great guy, full of enthusiasm. He wanted to become a doctor. First semester, he was happy acing all of his classes. Then he had Professor Williams and he lost all motivation. He gave up on his dreams of becoming a doctor and dropped out at the end of the school year. Well, I didn't let that happen to me. I stuck it out and graduated with reasonably good grades. Never let Professor Williams strip me of my confidence. And now, 2 years after graduating, I own my own company with a staff of 12. I was making way more than Professor Williams ever had. I decided to track him down. I went back to my university to receive an award from the Alumni Association. It was an amazing moment, and all my former professors were there to congratulate me. Professor Williams was the only one who didn't bother to show up. I figured he didn't want to admit that he was wrong about me. I know this sounds petty, but I needed to talk to him face to face to show him my award, see his expression, and to finally get over all of the trauma. I got his address from another professor who was glad to help. She said he was at home drinking by himself. That's what he did most nights. So I got in my car, feeling pretty good about myself, and then drove to the address. He lived in a part of town that I didn't really know, so I followed my GPS. I got to a winding road with no lights. Everything was dark and I had my high beams on because there was no other cars in sight. And that's when I saw a shape dart right in front of me. It happened so fast I didn't have time to swerve. My car hit something. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. Whatever I hit thumped against my hood and flew off to the side of the road. I had to stop and catch my breath. I didn't see what it was, but I knew it was a person. I had just hit someone and maybe just killed someone. I kept my headlights on and stepped out of the car. Hello. I saw a crumpled body lying at the edge of the asphalt. I knew it was a man in brown clothes. I knew his legs were twisted in unnatural angles, but I also knew that he was still alive. I could see his stomach rise and fall as he breathed. I should have called 911 right away, but I wasn't thinking straight. I crouched next to the man to get a better look. That's when I saw a large green disc clutched in his arms. It was a medium-sized turtle. The guy had wandered into the road to save a turtle. How could he not have seen my high beams coming straight at him? The turtle's little legs were wiggling around. He was totally fine from the accident. Then I looked closer at the man's face and I went numb. It wasn't just a stranger I hit. Oh my God. And in that moment, I didn't feel any guilt for hurting or possibly even killing my professor. If it were anyone else, I would be hyperventilating right now. What I felt in the moment was panic. I would get arrested. People would think that I did this on purpose, that I had chosen to run him over. He looked up at me, barely conscious, and mumbled out a single word: hillbilly. I pulled out my phone to call 911, thinking that if the professor died, he'd finally get what he wanted to ruin my life. But before I dialed, I took a second to think. I wasn't going to get in trouble for this. I wasn't speeding. The tire marks proved that. Plus, he was in the middle of a dark road as well as drunk. Even through the stench of blood, I could smell the liquor on him. Everyone could see that this was an accident. And then I had another thought, a darker thought. The longer I waited to call an ambulance, the less likely he would survive. I'm not a bad person, but my hatred for this man was strong enough to put me in a really dark place. Oh God. By then, the turtle had wriggled out of his arms and walked back across the road. I stood near his body, thinking about what to do. Should I let him die? I almost did, but in the end, I didn't have it in me. I'd survived 4 years of this man's torment, and I wasn't going to let him turn me into a murderer. I called 911. A little bit later, an ambulance came. The professor's injuries were severe, but it looked like they arrived in time. In a way, I was relieved, but another part of me wishes that I just waited a little bit longer. Then the paramedics came out of the ambulance. I didn't recognize him at first, but once I saw how he reacted to seeing the professor's body, I knew exactly who it was. Terry, the failed doctor whose life was ruined because of Professor Williams. I guess he stayed in town and became an EMT. As he loaded the professor onto the stretcher, we shared a long, meaningful look. I think he smirked a little, but neither of us said anything. I watched the ambulance drive away. It was going very, very slowly, almost intentionally slowly. I didn't have the nerve to let Professor Williams die, but I guess Terry may have. When they reached the hospital, it was already too late. So yeah, I never got to show the professor my award, so I brought it to his funeral. Fortnite Squad. Back in 2018, I was dropping into Fortnite, maining a sweaty skin with a pickaxe I'd grinded V-Bucks for. My squad was tight. About 10 of us, spread across the Midwest and the East Coast, but we clicked like we'd been building forts together forever. Voice chat nights ran long, yelling about drop spots or roasting each other's builds. That's where I met Jake and Sarah. Jake was the aggro player, always rushing with a shotgun, his booming laugh cutting through Discord. He'd bark when he dove into tilted towers. "Cover me, dumbass." Sarah was the strategist, calling out rotations and sniping through the bush. Her voice calm but sharp. She'd tease when I fumbled a 1v1. "Don't choke now, rookie." And I'd fire back. "Save your medkits for the pros, babe." We played together for 3 years straight. Offline meetups happened naturally. First a gaming expo in Chicago, then a LAN party in Milwaukee. Jake and Sarah rolled in from Kansas City. We hugged like we'd squat up forever, split a six-pack of IPAs, and by the weekend's end it felt like family. Jake rambled about his long-haul trucking, how the miles paid but left him empty. Sarah vented about wrangling their 2 kids, Ellie 5 and Max 3, while he was gone for weeks. She'd sigh over drinks. "It's like solo queuing with a ghost teammate." I nodded, feeling the weight of my own dead-end life in Cleveland, where Rust Belt winters ate your soul. One sweaty drop into Retail Row. After Jake ate a rocket launcher to the face, he threw out the idea. "Yo man, why you still in that frozen dump? Sarah says we got room in KC. Basement's open, move out, crash with us." I laughed it off. "What, so I can carry your ass in dues while you're hauling freight?" But Sarah jumped in, her voice warm through the headset. "For real, dude, Jake's gone half the time. You'd help with the kids, keep me sane. Plus, Kansas City's got barbecue that doesn't suck." I had nothing holding me. A warehouse job stacking boxes for pennies. Parents gone. No girl since college. 2 weeks later, I U-hauled my life west, heart racing like I just landed a victory royale. Sarah met me at the door, Ellie on her hip, Max yanking her shorts. "Welcome to the squad," she said, hugging me tight enough I caught her vanilla shampoo. Jake clapped my back, grinning. "Basement's yours, bro. Got a mini fridge for your monster cans." The setup was solid. Futon, desk for my rig, a window barely cracking the dirt. That first night we grilled burgers, kids chasing fireflies, and I felt anchored like I'd found a new landing zone. But job hunting in KC was brutal. Endless applications to warehouses, call centers, anything logistics. Weeks blurred. Mornings on Indeed, afternoons wrangling Ellie and Max while Sarah ran to her part-time salon gig. She'd say, ruffling my hair as she bolted out, "You're a lifesaver." "Ellie's already calling you Uncle Sniper." I'd heard the kids into naps, their sticky hands on my shirt. Demanding stories about the battle bus. Jake's road trip stretched. 5 days to Denver, 10 to Dallas. When he rolled in, smelling of diesel and diner coffee, we'd crack PBRs and squat up till our eyes burned. He'd grunt, clinking bottles, miss this. But Sarah, she lingered. Mornings in the kitchen, pouring coffee too close. She'd murmur, fingers grazing mine. Black, 2 sugars, right? Then came the setups. First was casual. Her coworker, Lisa, a fiery redhead from the nail station. Sarah insisted over tacos, squad up, my treat, kids asleep. Lisa's single, loves that gamer vibe you got, come on, get out there. I went awkward in a Target button-down. Lisa was cool, laughed at my Fortnite emote impressions, split a pitcher of margaritas, but it fizzled after 2 dates. Sarah didn't quit. She said one afternoon, folding laundry while I built Legos with Max. New plan, Jenna and Mia. Jenna's visiting from Minnesota. Blonde, outdoorsy, total bushwookie. Mia's local curves for days, builds like a pro. I choked on my beer. Both at once, she winked, tossing a sock at me. Why pick? Life's a short drop, sniper. Let me play wingman. The date was a mess. Barbecue at the lake. Jenna grilling me on crypto while Mia's hands Sarah watched from the cooler, smirking. Options right. Her eyes held mine too long when Mia leaned close. Money got tight. My savings bled out on gas and groceries that I chipped in for, but Sarah brushed it off. Squad sticks together, she'd say, squeezing my shoulder as we tag-teamed bedtime. Nights Jake was gone, she'd knock on my door after the kids crashed. Can't sleep, she'd whisper, slipping in with popcorn or a joint. We'd talk for hours, her dreams of a tattoo parlor, my regrets from Cleveland. The air got heavy, her laugh low, foot nudging mine. One muggy night, ceiling fan humming, she sprawled on my futon in shorts that rode up, venting about Jake's distance, his endless routes. She said, voice breaking, sometimes I wonder if he even sees me. I nodded, throat tight. He'd be blind not to. Her hand hit my knee, electric. You're sweet, too sweet for this town. We didn't cross the line, not then. But the room shrank, her scent lingering like a trap. I landed a job. Forklift driver at a distribution center, moving Amazon pallets for $18 an hour. Graveyard shift, but it paid. I stashed cash in a coffee can under the futon, eyeing my own place. Helped more around the house. Mowed the lawn, fixed the sink, drove Sarah to a doctor's visit when her car died. She teased, linking arms in the waiting room. My hero. Ellie drew me pictures. Life felt close to normal. Then Jake rolled in early. October, leaves falling, air sharp with Midwest chill. I just clocked out, wiped when I heard his Peterbilt rumble in. Downstairs, I crashed on the futon, scrolling Insta till sleep hit. Woke to boots stomping, door flying open. Jake filled the doorway, face red, veins popping. You piece of shit, he roared, lunging. I scrambled up, pulse racing. Jake, what the hell? Sarah hovered behind, eyes wide, robe clutched. Baby, it's not. He cut her off, spinning. Don't lie. I saw the texts, the late nights. This fucker's after my wife. I raised my hands. Man, nothing happened, she's yours. I never. He grabbed my collar, slamming me into the wall, plaster cracked. I know you're kind, buddy moves in, I'm my girl like that, like my ex who banged her in our bed while I was on the road. His breath stank of whiskey, eyes crazed. I knew the story. His high school fiancée, the betrayal that broke him. I gasped, pushing back. Jake, listen, we talked. Yes, she's lonely when you're gone, that's it, swear on my mom. He laughed cold. Lonely. That's your play, get your shit and go now. Sarah stepped up, tears streaming. Jake, stop, he's family, we invited him. He jabbed a finger at her. Family, this snake, pack his crap, Sarah, or I'll torch it. The next hour blurred, me shoving clothes into duffels, gut churning while they screamed upstairs. Jake yelled, you think I don't see the looks, the uncle sniper crap? Sarah's voice broke back. You're paranoid, he's been good to us, me, it's the kids. Ellie whimpered, Max wailed. I paused in the kitchen, spotting my coffee can empty. A grand gone, my PS4 lugged cross-country missing from the shelf. Guys, I called, voice shaky. My stuff, the console, the cash. Silence. Then Jake's boots thumped down. Finders keepers for the trouble. He shoved me out, duffel in my arms. Outside, dawn gray, their garage door rattled up. Sarah stood at the window, mouthing sorry. She didn't stop him. I crashed at a motel, $689, draining my debit. Called a squad mate, some IT guy in St. Louis who wired bus fare. Rode Greyhound East, starring at Fields, replaying every late-night knock, every touch. Betrayal cut deepest from them, people I trusted like squad mates. The cherry blossom. The blossom tree had always been there for as long as I could remember. It sat on the very edge of the graveyard that my house overlooked, and every year at the end of March, it bloomed. There was one thing that made it stand out from the other cherry blossoms in town. Instead of pink or white, this one had petals the color of blood. The fact that it had been planted in a graveyard could be considered strange, too. It didn't quite fit in with the dark hues of the gravestones or the somber oak trees that grew around it. It was a splash of color on a monochrome canvas, a splatter of blood on dark soil. It was approaching the last few days of March when I noticed the petals had yet to open. Blossoms could be finicky with their timing, but I had never known this one to be late in the many years I'd lived there. It should have opened by now, and for some reason, the emptiness of it was bothering me. One morning, I decided to go down and take a look at the blossom myself. Although I lived on the edge of a graveyard, nobody I knew was buried there, and I had never had a reason to visit, nor had I ever taken a look at the cherry blossom up close. It was a damp March morning. The soil was wet and squelchy, and the air trembled with a light drizzle. Was the weather the reason why the cherry blossom hadn't bloomed yet? I wasn't very knowledgeable about botany, so I could only guess. I approached the gate to the graveyard and opened it with a soft creak. It was still early, so the graveyard was empty. The overcast sky cast a dismal pall over the rows of cracked headstones and filled me with a strange feeling of despondence. I'd been living by the graveyard for several years now, but I had never really thought about the fact that I was so close to a place of death, nothing but bones beneath my feet. I shivered despite the mild temperature and walked between the graves toward the bare cherry blossom. Without its bright petals, there was something skeletal about it, like pale reaching fingers stripped of flesh. I shoved my hands into my pockets, still shivering. Why was I doing this? Why did I care whether or not the cherry blossom was late to bloom? What did it have to do with me? I wasn't sure, but I was already here, so I told myself to keep going. I hadn't realized how big the graveyard was from simply overlooking it. The graves stretched on in every direction, and every step barely seemed to bring me closer to the blossom. The further I went, the more dilapidated and cracked the headstones became, choked with ivy and moss, the names barely visible beneath the clouds of dirt obscuring them. These were the forgotten ones. Even in a month like March, a month of new beginnings and new life, these graves sank eternally into loneliness and decay. I finally reached the cherry blossom and stopped just short of its searching branches. Closed buds, like tiny clenched fists, peppered the branches. They still showed no sign of opening. Parts of the trees almost looked as decayed and withered as the ground around it. From a distance, it had always looked lively and healthy, but up close, the cracked bark and shriveled petals told a different story. I found myself reaching out towards the tree. I wanted to touch one of the tiny buds, perhaps under the naive inclination that it might bloom beneath my touch. I stepped forward, ducking beneath the wider branches, and stretched my hand out. The second my finger touched the bud, something sharp and unseen pierced my skin, pain twinning through my nerves. I withdrew with a sharp hiss, blood welling to my fingertips. There was blood on the blossom, too, little droplets of red staining the pale bark. What had cut me? I couldn't see anything sharp. No thorns, no jagged piece of wood. As I watched, the blood slipped between the cracks in the bud and disappeared as if it had never been there at all. I frowned and stepped back. A strange chill worked its way through my body, and the sky seemed to grow heavier, sensing an impending downpour. I decided to take my leave for now. As I left the graveyard, I realized I was no longer alone. An old woman with gray hair and shriveled skin was watching me between the graves. I offered her a faint smile, but she did not return it. Her lips were moving, but I couldn't quite hear what she was saying. I stepped closer. She murmured, "The March tree will bloom again." I blinked at her, trying to understand the meaning of her words. "Pardon," I said. She repeated, "The March tree will bloom again," her voice carrying on the breeze. Okay," I said, turning away. I took a step forward and gasped when something grabbed my arm. It was the woman. She had moved closer, though somehow I hadn't heard a trace of her footsteps. She had a strange glint in her eye, her lips cocked into a twisted smile. She said, her voice a breathy whisper that made my skin crawl uncomfortably. "The March tree thanks you." "That's great," I said, trying to slide my arm free of hers. She finally let go and walked away, muttering under her breath. I shook my head and left. Some people were really odd. That night, I dreamt of the cherry blossom in the graveyard. I dreamed of its dark, blood-red petals as it stood against the grayness of the cemetery. I dreamed of the bones crushed beneath the ground, the body sown with its roots. When I woke the next morning and looked out at the window, the cherry blossom had finally bloomed. Its petals were dusty pink to start off with, but I knew over time they would take on that reddish hue that made this particular tree so striking. If only I had known what it would cost. The next few days were strange. Every night I would dream of the blossom tree on the edge of the graveyard, and every morning I would wake to find the petals a deeper shade of red. That wasn't the only thing that was changing either. With every day that passed, I seemed to grow more haggard and tired. My body felt constantly drained, and I would feel lightheaded and nauseous after only a little bit of strenuous activity. When I glimpsed myself in the mirror, I noticed that my skin had taken on a strange, chalky pallor, like I wasn't getting enough sunlight. My body was failing me, and I had no idea why. I felt so weak, so frail, like the smallest thing could break me. Deep shadows appeared beneath my eyes, sucking the color out of my skin. I became a ghost, pale and hollow and fragile. Then, on the last day of March, I could no longer get out of bed. My body had completely given up on me. I was like those old gravestones, crippled and weakened and forgotten. I knew somehow that I would not be part of the living for much longer. Just before I slipped into darkness for the last time, a voice echoed in my mind. A strange, breathy whisper. "The March tree thanks you for your sacrifice." San Antonio robbery. After Game 5, I was on cloud 9. The Knicks just won the NBA Finals. I was riding a once-in-a-lifetime buzz, drunk off my ass after kicking it with thousands of the most awesome strangers I had ever met. Eventually, though, I had to find my way back. I was hundreds of miles from home in what was, as far as I was concerned, some backwater town in Texas. I couldn't get home until the next day. But somewhere in that rioting mess, a quiet, safe hotel room was waiting for me. I made sure to book it within somewhat reasonable walking distance of the game, though I was too messed up for anything to be simple. For who knows how long, I stumbled around in circles, checking my phone, trying to get service, struggling to read a single line on the map. So incapable of finding my way that I was starting to get pissed off at myself. I had done too much and screwed myself over. However, the wonderful city of San Antonio, Texas, would soon sober me up with a warm, swampy welcome. I had traveled there by myself, gone to the game with just my single ticket, partied with the crowd, and split off on my own when I felt like it. But now, all of a sudden, I was alone. A fat bitch was following me. Had I been able to walk straight, I could have lost her. She was staring at me as she shook the earth and waddled in my direction, a look of depraved, gluttonous desire on her immense face. I knew I had been the target for my apparent weakness. Yet, even in that state, I was not willing to go there. Not with her. As I pressed on, straining her limited stamina, I inadvertently drew out her rage. This forced an unfortunate realization upon me. She didn't want me. She wanted to beat me because I had beaten her, not me specifically. But the Knicks had taken the finals from the Spurs in their home city, no less, and I was proudly fitted up head to toe in Knicks gear. The whale following me had managed to find herself a Spurs jersey in a quintuple XL. My drunken idiot brain started to connect the dots as Miss Godzilla let out the first of many nuclear screeches. The fat woman shouted after me, Stop running, face me like a man." I turned and yelled back, "Just drop it, fatty. Look, there's a McDonald's right there. Ain't you hungry?" For as fat as she was extremely persistent. I could try to run, but would just as easily trip over a pothole and eat shit, landing me in a much worse position, even if I suddenly ran into my hotel. The lard lady would probably burst through the door and crush me to death in my sleep. In the end, I made a decision, a drunken decision. I stopped, turned around, and faced her. I said, "Stop following me, you nasty fat bitch. The spurs are trash and I ain't going to hit, so just go home." She laughed and replied, "You think I want you, twig? You ain't worth shit to me. All I want is that gear." I asked, "What, my jersey?" She said, "All of it." I said, "Yeah, right, none of it'll fit you." She shouted, "Shut up. All you Knicks fans come here and trash the city, my home. I deserve some compensation. You bitches always want something to eat. Enough. After tonight, that gear's going to be worth a fortune, so you're going to give it to me." I don't know what happened, but the second I saw that knife, all my drunken courage evaporated. I started to say something smart like, "How are you going to catch up to me?" But then I stumbled over my words. I could have just turned around and ran for my life, but I was too scared to take my eyes off her. I tried to take a step back, but just ended up tripping on nothing. The second I ended up on my back and my head slammed against the ground, I knew what was about to happen. She said, "You messed up now, pretty boy." I begged. No, let me just get comfortable." I pleaded, "Please just stop, I can't breathe." She said, "What's that, hun? Oh, you poor thing, are you in pain? I can help with that, you know." I shouted, "Get off me, bitch," she replied. "Only if you agree to strip down and give me every piece of Knicks gear you got." I said, I'll do it, please just get up." She said, "All right, give me a second." When I hesitated, she snapped, "I said now." I said, "Okay, fine, just take my shit. I don't care about it, just take it and go." After that mountain of a woman robbed me, I searched for someone on the street to call the police for me. It took longer than I would have hoped for a frightened naked man to get a 911 call, and longer still for the police to actually show up. But I'm sure the sore loser Spurs fans were giving them a hard time. Despite forcing me to stay in San Antonio for far too long, I didn't end up losing much from the incident. Not monetarily, anyway. My pride will never recover. Luckily, a woman her size was quite easy to point out in a lineup, so she'll get to face the consequences of what she did to me. This summer story was inspired by a San Antonio woman who was accused of robbing two New York Knicks fans at knife point following an NBA Finals game earlier this month. Absid Michelle Rodriguez, 30, has been charged with aggravated robbery in connection with the June 14th incident in downtown San Antonio. According to an arrest warrant, a 31-year-old woman and a 31-year-old man were walking in the area after the NBA Finals game while wearing New York's Knicks apparel when they were approached by Rodriguez and three unidentified suspects. Investigators say Rodriguez was armed with a knife and demanded the victim's hand over their Knicks clothing. The victims were allegedly assaulted by Rodriguez and the other suspects during the encounter. The suspects forcibly took property from the victims without their consent before fleeing the scene in a vehicle. Investigators said the victims were able to photograph the vehicle and obtain identifying information before it left the area. Officials said one of the victims positively identified Rodriguez in a photo lineup as the person who committed the robbery. Rodriguez was arrested and charged with aggravated robbery. The case remains under investigation. Cannibal son. When my wife and I first started having kids, we figured we were ready to hunker down. After leading rather crazy lives through our 20s, it was time to get serious and build a family. We always figured that once the youngest went off to college, we could pick up where we left off, albeit much older. Tragically, that was an assumption made in vain. Our youngest never left. He never grew up, never made anything of himself, becoming a heavier burden year after year and with each day. The problems he had in his youth didn't go away with age. They magnified. Years ago, he used to get bullied for being the weird kid. I can't blame the other kids. My son is a creep. He liked to sock girls, pull their hair out, and when he got into fights with the other boys, he clawed and bit. By the time he was a teenager, the other kids didn't pick on him anymore. They just avoided him. He never had any friends. All he cared about was killing things. We never had a problem with rats or snakes because of him. What he did with the dead pests after he killed them, I don't want to know. However, that alone did not make up for everything else he leached off of us. He refused to go to college, get a job, or do any housework. We tried various means of getting him out, yet nothing worked. Despite knowing that I could get hurt, I still get into fights with my son. I can't help it. The things he says piss me off like nothing else. Nobody in their right mind could even come up with the kind of things he said just last night at the dinner table. My wife said, "This salmon is excellent, dear." I replied, "Oh, thank you, dear," she said, "it's nothing really." Then my son muttered, "It could be better, I suppose it is a little overdone." I said, "Now hold on, Rose, don't take that from him. Boy, apologize to your mother." My son said, "I'm sorry, it's just a little fishy." My wife said, "It's fish, it's going to be a little fishy." My son replied, "I know, but I'm not used to it like you are." My wife asked, "Well, then what would you rather eat?" My son said, "Like you would ever share." I snapped, "Speak up." My son said, "Fine, I want to eat Mom." My wife shouted, "Take that back this instant." My son said, "Don't worry, Dad, I don't want to eat her like you do. I don't like that fishy shit. I want it raw, bloody, juicy, right off the bone at 98 degrees F." I screamed. "Damn you, boy." I lost control. I got up and lunged at him, reached across the table and pulled him in close to give him the beating he deserved. We traded blows, destroying the entire spread in the process. It only lasted a few seconds before I came to my senses and pushed him off, but dinner was already ruined. At that point, I couldn't stand to be around my son, and storming out of the house after dark, there was only one place to go. I went to the bar where I had a few drinks and talked to some folks about what happened. They just let me vent until I downed my third pint, by which point I was finally calm enough to return home. When I got there, it was past midnight. The lights were off, so I expected everyone to be asleep. The house was quiet, but something wasn't right. The kitchen wasn't clean. My wife always made sure it was spotless before bed. I went to check our room to check on her. She wasn't in bed either. The bathroom was empty. It's like she had vanished halfway through her nightly chores. There was only one other person who might know where she'd gone or what she was up to. Walking up to my son's room, I knocked on his door, trying not to stir things up again so soon. He didn't respond. I only gave it a few seconds before opening the door anyway. His room was empty too. Where the hell was everyone? By now, my level of concern was winning the fight against the beer trying to calm me down. I marched back into the bedroom and grabbed my old billy club in case something was up. A little better equipped, I canvassed the house. All the rooms were empty. The last place to check was the garage. Stepping into the garage, I fumbled my hands across the wall until I found the light switch. Then I flipped it, finally laying bare the unimaginable truth. My wife was laid out on the concrete. She was in pieces. Our son was hovering over her, soaked in her blood. His hands reached inside and pulled up pieces of her. He brought a chunk to his mouth and took a bite and turned his head to glare at me. My son said, "You know," I screamed. "Why have you done this? What have you done?" My son replied, "The devil exists. He is in me. We ate Mom." He looked away from me to take another bite, but I couldn't let him. I ran forward and clubbed him. He didn't go down. He didn't fight back. He just put up his bloody hands and took it. Once I was sure he couldn't run, I let up and called the police. Stayed on him until they arrived. That was just last night. I'm still processing. My son's finally gone, but now so is my wife. Any hope I ever had going back to my old life with her is dead along with her. This summer story was inspired by an incident involving a Minnesota man who was now facing an automatic life sentence after a judge convicted him of taking out and partially eating his own mother in their lakeside home. Eric Leaf Jordahl, 26, was found guilty for the death of his 62-year-old mother, Rosalie Rose Johnson. The attack took place on January 23rd of 2020 inside their house. It started late that night in Johnson's bedroom. She had told her son to go back to bed when he suddenly attacked her and then began stabbing her multiple times with a butcher knife and then biting her. Medical examiners later determined he also cut up and ate parts of her body while she was still alive. The next morning, Jordal's father, Andrew Jordal, came home and found his son standing in the garage covered in blood. The son told him, "The devil exists. It's in me and I ate Mom." The conviction carries an automatic life sentence without parole. He heads back to court Monday for a hearing on his mental illness defense, which could send him to a psychiatric facility instead of prison.